In the world of March Mammal Madness, I do believe it's time to say, let's get ready to rumble. And so on behalf of the Texas Biology Teachers Association, TABT, I'm happy to welcome all of you to our very first session of our speaker series, which we'll be trying to have one of these per month. Is going to be the goal. And I'm just about going to be able to announce who our next guest is, although they haven't given me permission to do so. That'll be coming out on social media soon. But we're so excited to have Dr. Katie Hinde, the mastermind behind March Mammal Madness, here with us tonight. And I want to introduce her to you in a way that is befitting of her and all that she has done for us as educators here. So let me get started. So Dr. Katie Hinde is an associate professor at the School of Human Evolution and Social Change, the Center for Evolution and Medicine at Arizona State. As director of the Comparative Lactation Lab, she investigates the evolutionary ecology and behavioral biology of milk. She completed all of her professional training at public institutions, beginning at Seattle Central Community College. After transferring to the University of Washington, she earned a BA in anthropology in 1999 and headed south to earn a PhD in anthropology from the University of California, Los Angeles in 2008. And I am realizing that I will be reading this until midnight because Dr. Katie Hinde is so gosh darn accomplished and has done so much that this literally goes on. So we're just gonna tear that up. And instead of that, I'm gonna give you all of the wonderment that is Katie Hinde. You will get that in chat. You'll see a file that will pop up, which will include that, as well as one-stop shopping for all your March Mammal Madness needs, as well as links to the Texas Association of Biology Teachers, including a donation link that anyone who's willing to share a few dollars our way, it helps us bring in more speakers and also to support Texas biology teachers in these times where our biology teachers need all the support we can get. So I want to say I am so happy to have Katie here with us. She has made such a huge impact in the world through March Mammal Madness. And none of you want to hear me talk and talk and talk, but I am happy to say, Katie, take it away.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, John and the TABT for having me to talk about March Mammal Madness. It's always exciting when I get to interact more directly with teachers. Real quickly, I have everybody in gallery view. Through reactions with thumbs up, could people tell me like if this is, if they're experienced doing March Mammal Madness, and with the little trumpet with confetti, let me know if this is your first year thinking about adopting March Mammal Madness. Okay, all right. Okay, oh, we've got a good mix. Lots of folks that, okay, so we have a lot of experienced folks. I prepped some stuff for kind of first timers. So I'll go through it fast enough that the experienced folks, we can get to the Q&A a little bit quicker and spend a little bit more time on what's new for this year. But if you are thinking about adopting it for the first time, drop questions into the chat. Also unmute yourself and ask questions. You can interrupt me at any time. Happy to answer questions as they emerge. And the idea here is to have as minimal amount of time of presentation as possible so we can get to interacting, because I think that's one of the key things that has made March Mammal Madness so exciting and so fun is the ways in which the community comes together, how our learners are interacting in classrooms and with us and in hallways. And so we're gonna try and get to that quickly, but for people that are just coming into the March Mammal Madness, whatever the heck this thing is, let's do a little bit of background. real quickly. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to start my talk. And John, I don't see the chat anymore or anything, so just holler at me when I need to be paying attention elsewhere from the little spiel I have.
Okay, you got to deal with that.
All right, so this is the 9th year of March Mammal Madness and the 10th annual tournament, because I began it as a kind of a lark in 2013, and every year it has systematically grown and expanded and kind of become this kaleidoscope party across many, many different spaces, both online and, as many of you know, in your real world classrooms. And I think it's really intuitive to pretty much every educator who's paying attention to learners that if you were to walk into your classroom with a list of 56 species or 65 species and say, tell me about their habitat and their body mass and their weaponry and their armor and their temperament, you know, to learn about their adaptations and community ecosystem, this would be excruciating for pretty much every single learner. It would be unstructured, busy work that didn't create the connections and deeper learning. And yet, if you do that same list of animals in a bracket composition and say, who would win? All of a sudden, it completely changes the way kids are thinking about these dynamics, and they're motivated to do research to predict these kinds of outcomes. And so this is obviously, I'm not showing the 2022 bracket yet, but this is the 2018 one. And for those of you that have not worked with a bracket yet, if we zoom in on one of the divisions, what we can see is that there's a series of pairings, and students are asked to say what they think would happen if these two species encountered each other in the better ranked species habitat. Now, of course, this is super frustrating because the lower the number, the better the species is at the expected outcome. And so that gets tricky, but our frequently asked questions guide talks about how you fill out a bracket. And so after you see those matchups, you write who you think wins, and then you have the next round of matchups and the next round of matchups, all the way out to a champion. Those of you that are working with college students or high schoolers or even middle schoolers, I really encourage you to motivate the students to fill it all the way out to their ultimate champion. Those of you that are working with younger learners, you might have them fill out the first 2 rounds and then do a reset where they can repick just to keep their interest in the tournament as it progresses. Because if they've picked really badly in the first 2 rounds and none of their combatants are still in it, then it can be kind of disappointing. Mark and Jenna Kissel's daughter one time picked all of them based on which one she thought was cuter. And that is not generally a winning strategy in March Mammal Madness. All right, so you get students thinking about who would win. And I think one of the things that's really wonderful about that structure is that it gets students to think in contingencies. It gets them to start engaging in integrative complexity and bring together pieces of information from multiple sources and cognitively interdigitate them to think about what could happen. And by having a universe with a rule structure where they have in the early rounds some ability to predict where the habitat is, it helps them think about the ways that certain animals are going to do better when they're in the habitat they're adapted to. And so in terms of the timeline of March Mammal Madness, because although the educator request form says in multiple places that we will send out the materials on February 22nd, I get emails every day about like, I haven't gotten my materials. When are those getting sent? What's going to happen? So here's a quick little timeline. The tournament begins with hype time. That's now. We get other science Twitter games to start revealing the combatants. We release Valentine's cards with science-based Valentine's messages with some of the combatants. And it really just kind of starts seeding exciting information. On Saturday this week, on Darwin Day, we'll release the official 4 divisions. And this is really fun because people can start thinking about, okay, which species might be going into which divisions. and what other species might be featured in those divisions. And this is part of the back and forth between the organizing team and the players in terms of kind of, there's so much space to think creatively and the ways that different categories can be created. And so we've structured the tournament to build up all that hype. The educator materials are coming out on February 22nd. And those are going to include, every year we add more resources and we refine our resources. So this year's packet is going to include, obviously the bracket will have a large format bracket for the people that really like a bigger set of brackets instead of a single sheet. We'll also have it in Spanish, and we'll also have a people that rely on screen readers as vision impaired bracket. We're going to update the life sciences lesson plans, and these are going to focus on the tree of life and ecosystems. We have both pre-tournament research lesson plans, and then during the tournament, ways in which we help students structure information that they can get from the stories that the scientists tell. We've got a humanities lesson plan, which you can use in your science classes or get your humanities colleagues to adopt. So these are going to be writing haikus. One of the greatest haiku masters was actually a teenage girl, and the lesson plan talks about that. And so we encourage you to have students write haikus about their chosen champion or the animal they research or something about the environment. And then we also have a very structured artwork assignment that brings together ecology adaptations and the animal and allows them to be aggregated across students in a really beautiful visual display in a classroom. This year, we're going to prep intro slides for everybody so that you don't have to just create that from scratch. We will again have a slide deck of the combatants. This is a Google slide set that has each combatant, a picture of it, information about its habitat, if it's a carnivore, omnivore, or herbivore. And then we also have a silhouette of it to scale relative to an adult and a kid human. And we've made real attention to detail about showing all sorts of families, all sorts of kids, all sorts of parents and caretakers. And then we're also gonna have an updated, we're gonna revamp the FAQ into educator pro tips. And these are going to be things like, don't grade kids on how well they make predictions about the outcomes, because there's a bit of embedded randomness in the tournament. So we generally think the better ranked species should win, but we ultimately decide the outcome with the aid of a random number generator. We can talk more about this in a little bit. We then have the bracket drop, and that time is a lot shorter than it has been in recent years, because last year we were very sad to say that a very small number, but enough to be dismaying, of teachers were leaking materials online and then reselling our materials in kind of profit generating websites. So because that is disappointing to the team, we've decided to shorten that advance release to educators, but greatly expand the time before the tournament starts. So you have almost 3 weeks to work with your learners in this kind of pre-tournament research phase. So that's kind of a really big part of how kids kind of learn about the different animals that we're featuring. We strongly recommend that all of you bookmark the LibGuide at ASU, and you're going to get the link to this. Our brilliant, amazing librarian, Annalee Perry, has been working tirelessly at building a very navigable, very elegant website that has a .edu address, so it doesn't get caught by school kind of filters. And she's also put together a place called Animal Background Information, and she links a lot of specific resources for animal information that's reliable, that's updated, that is good guidance, so that students aren't just trying to navigate the information landscape of the entire internet. And sometimes she upstates the resources with some hints about what species or divisions might be coming up. So it might be worth taking a peek at. We also have a keep collection, and I really encourage first-time teachers to go visit the keep collection. We have an archive of all the previous sports summaries. So we do a little 1-paragraph blurb about what happened from a scientific perspective at the encounter between the animals. We have example play-by-plays so students can understand how we create that play-by-play for what happens. There's stuff like a phylogeny poster. We're working on, by the time the educator materials drop, our goal is to have all the species that we've ever featured in 10 tournaments of March Mammal Madness, over 530, all put together on a giant tree of life. So we're very excited about that. Right now they have one that only goes through 2020. And then also in the pre-research phase, the bracket comes out on February 23rd, and 2 days later on February 25th, we're hosting an all-day, but you can come for just certain segments, an all-day festival on 10 tournaments of March Mammal Madness. So key scientists that have been involved in the tournament, some of them since the beginning, are going to come, and we're going to have kind of a pro tips and historical perspective hour. We're going to talk about animal behavior, what it means to study animal behavior, how you become an animal behaviorist, genetics and the tree of life, paleontology, art and design, animal behavior again, and then a wrap up at the end. And this will be coming out in your educator materials too. All right, let me speed this up. You can also follow the Facebook page where things get updated every day once the tournament starts. If you're on Twitter, you can follow the Twitter account, and this is the official Twitter account. Only content safe for kids will be retweeted at this account. If you just follow the hashtag, I make no promises about what the hordes are going to be saying out there. So if you want to keep it clean, you can go to the March Mammal Madness Twitter account. And we do have the blog posts, my blog that I started over a decade ago, and but really the LibGuide is the best place. All right, then once the tournament actually starts, we're going to have the wildcard matchup on March 14th. There are going to be opening ceremonies that precede the battle. So prepare yourself for the extravaganza of hearing about all the different contributors, all the effort it takes to make this possible, provide a lot of key links for where people can get outcome information and other stuff for their learners. And then we will have the wild card matchup. And the wild card matchup is really an amuse-bouche for the tournament, because whoever wins that wild card ends up being the 16th seed, the worst seed, to fight a #1 seed, the best seed within a particular division. All right, so I'm going to just stop share real quickly, just because I talked for a long time, and see if we have any questions or anything that people are wondering about that I've already said. And then I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the play-by-plays.
So far, mostly what we're seeing is folks being very excited about things.
Okay, cool. We're really excited too. And for once, and I mean, I should knock on every single piece of wood in my house. I'm like, I feel like we're not as stressed at this point of the year that we usually are. Check in with me in like 10 days. All right, so back to the presentation. All right, and especially any newbies, feel free to ask your questions, because I really value hearing questions from educators, because you're the ones that are using it most often with learners. And so hearing your questions and then hearing other teachers' answers is super good. So don't feel inhibited from asking anything ever. All right, so this is one of my all-time favorite battles that I ever wrote. I had to be on a plane when it was happening, so Chris Anderson tweeted it for me. And this was a very closely paired matchup between the 8th seed platypus and the 9th seed maned rat. And people were, all right, anybody want to unmute and say whether or not they had the platypus as their dark horse because it has venom? All right, John, you're waving your hand. Fantastic. Okay, So a lot of people were like, the platypus is like the sleeper combatant. It has venom. It's cool. It's a venomous mammal. We don't have a lot of those. And so, so here's, we give in the play-by-play, we introduce what the matchup is going to be. We introduce, in corner number 1, we have key information about the platypus. In corner number 2, here's key information about the maned rat. And what's interesting is that the platypus is venomous, right? So it injects venom. And the maned rat is poisonous because it is impervious to a poisonous bark that it then chews up and then rubs on its own body. And it can, cause seizures and heart attacks in predators. Do your research. So people were really excited about the sharp spurs on the ankles of the webbed feet of the platypus, which can inject a venom into a predator. But, and this isn't in Wikipedia, folks, in March, the gland that produces platypus venom is the most shrunken and useless because it's not their mating season and males are not fighting each other for access to females. All right, so this is kind of one of those science facts that we embed into the story as we go to tell it. And of course, I'm trying to see if anybody's here. No. People did not know that fact. And of course, there was great reaction because it seems like it's happening live, like a sporting event. And we set the battle actually at Lake St. Clair National Park in Tasmania, which I had been at the week before and seen a platypus. And had this kind of back and forth of what happened when the platypus and the maned rat collide. And so you have this, like, they encounter each other at the burrow. The rat pulls back its head and shoulders and tries to solicit an attack. The platypus whips around with its spur. But additional fun fact about the maned rat, it has extra thick dermis on its side that's basically impervious to even the sharpest teeth, claws, and beaks. This is a little armored rodent that also has poison on its side. And so that spur, even though it didn't have venom, it couldn't penetrate the rat's skin. And we are citing fundamental basic empirical research from Kingdon in 2012 to demonstrate, what could happen. So the maned rat ended up defeating the platypus with its super sturdy sides. And this is not necessarily what a lot of learners predicted. And what we now know from cognitive learning is that if you just tell a series of facts, the mind doesn't tend to hold on to it, the typical mind. But if you embed those facts within a story in a way that affects the story outcome, then people are much better, kids especially are much better at remembering that information. And so what happened is kids thought about in their head what could happen when the maned rat met the platypus. They made a story in their own mind, and then they took that knowledge, and then the narrators added to that knowledge. And in this way, learners are co-constructing narratives, and narrative-centered learning environments can promote the deep connection-building, meaning-making activities that define constructivist learning. This is a wonderful essay by Mott et al. In 1999 that was really advocating that we do more narrative-centered learning within sciences. It's present in history and social studies and the humanities broadly, but it hasn't penetrated sciences to the same extent. And we're really missing opportunities in engaging learners without it. So, how does this all come together every year? Well, it's a huge amount of extensive effort from so many amazing people. We have scientist narrators who, after finding out what the random number generator has told us the battle outcome is, they then go and scour the scholarly literature to craft any kind of story that explains the outcome. We have academic societies that are sharing images or curating open, freely available journal articles. We have seen this week the Twitter Games cross promotion. We have artists. So we've got the scientific illustrators, the puppeteers that do the video recaps. The morning after battles, there's a sports show with rodent puppets talking about what happened. And then Will Nickley, who does the bracket for me every year, he showed up in 2015 and he said, I need to save you and the world from your janky PowerPoint, Katie. And here is an elegantly designed, graphically appropriate bracket. So this is really what March Mammal Madness has been all about, is that people love it and they're so excited about it that they show up with their talents and their suggestions. And we are a big tent organization, if you can call us an organization. And we welcome people. We welcome their skill sets, their talents, their enthusiasm, and their activities. Obviously, the educators that are sharing it with their learners, we collaborate with curriculum designers. We now are translating most of our materials into Spanish. I mentioned the kid-friendly Twitter, but we've got librarians, academic publishers, museums, conservation organizations, and this actual phylogeny of March Mammal Madness is out of date. We've expanded even since I made this figure. It's a lot of really, really amazing people who have come together over the 10 tournaments, and we're expanding again this year, have some new people, and have some really new, exciting things in store. In terms of the players, for those of you that have already been using it and keep showing up year after year, I think you know how incredibly engaging this tournament is with learners. They think about it. They show up to talk to you about things that they've thought about. They email you about things they thought of over the summer. I had one teacher, and I'm sorry if you're in this room and I've forgotten your name. A teacher sent me a slide deck last summer that one of their not most strong students had put together spontaneously in the summertime, a slide deck of suggested species that should be featured in the tournament because they had amazing adaptations, and listed all these species and had put together pictures and explanations and like their own thoughts about what might happen. It was this amazing project, and I'm excited to say that one of the very impressive species that was suggested is definitely in this year's tournament. One of the things we see in our surveys of educators is that a lot of educators intend to do this with their AP students as kind of a break and give them kind of a little bit of fun and relaxation as they head into the AP exam. And I think that's great. I love it. I also really want to encourage educators to use it with their non-AP classes, because a lot of teachers are telling us the extent to which this can be somebody's spark experience that helps them fall in love with science, right? People talk about, like birders talk about the spark bird that made somebody start paying attention to birds and become a birder. This tournament can be a spark event for loving science and the natural world. And one of the things to also keep in mind is that in the tournament bracket, all but one of the teams or combatants is going to lose. So keep, obviously get emotionally invested in your chosen champion, but recognize that most of the animals will not end up atop the podium. And also recognize that when we're emotionally engaged is when we have the best learning retention, and it really sticks in our mind quite strongly. So I want to just kind of wrap up with, we published this last year. This was from an earlier survey. We've got more data coming, more papers coming. But when we went through and coded educator responses, the two most common things that came up were love and excited and students, and another question we got a lot of thank you. And so to us, like, one of the things that's really been special about this tournament is the way it has built community connections across learners and educators and scientists and artists and general members of the public that have lasted years and years, and we hope continue to last years and years more. So I'm going to stop sharing and open it up to any questions you have about what I've covered or stuff I haven't covered. And anything we want to talk about for our last half hour or so together.
I have a question if I can ask.
Yeah.
I'm party crashing from Wyoming.
Welcome.
I saw your name up on John's NABT post, and I got to see you speak in 2018.
Oh, at the NABT meeting.
Yes.
Yeah. That was so wonderful.
Just so you know, I cried through your entire presentation because it was the first time I had left this guy at home.
Yeah, that's a tough trip.
Right. So my question is, I teach at a community college, so I'm not seeing the same students every semester. Is there a way to reuse your March materials in the fall semester so that I could kind of give that same experience to my students?
Yes, there is. So
okay.
Your best bet. So everything is archived. Everything from the tournament ever. So some stuff is going to be linked from the LibGuide is your best place to go. And then 2 days ago we put so after the play, I should have said this, sorry. After we do the play-by-play on Twitter in live performance style,
right,
we have like a backstage manager that's like, all right, you're up next. And
so awesome.
And yeah, like it does, you do feel like you're backstage, right? And like everybody like runs out to do their battle and then comes back sweating into the back channel. And it's like, it's stressful. And so after we do that, we create a PDF, a permanent PDF of all of that night's official tweets. And those get posted, a link to the PDF gets posted at the LibGuide. We also have sports summarists who do like a kind of 1 paragraph write-up of what went down. It doesn't have all the detail, it doesn't have all the science because it's a summary. And that gets posted at the LibGuide. And then, and we have, obviously the MC Marmot puppet show is also posted. It might not be the best thing for community college students, right? It's for our littler learners. And what we've now done is all the sports summaries are now in a single, right now, everything from 2018 to 2021 is put into a single document and it's in the Keep collection. So you can go back and you can reread what happened. All the brackets are still there. And now students can like look up what happened. So you have
we won't tell them how to do that.
Fair enough. And then what we're going to do for the sports summaries this year and moving forward is we're going to have kind of more of a dispatch layout for them. And we're going to link, we're going to have a citation works cited page so people can see the scholarly citation. We've cited over 1,300 scholarly papers in the history of the tournament from over 300 different academic journals. So we'll have more of the like, here's the sources that we used. The links are embedded in the tweets, but we'll kind of curate those for the legitimacy, because a lot of like what happens is it's important to understand that in every single battle, we imagine a healthy, vibrant, motivated animal encounters another animal, but in the wild, most of the times they don't fight, right? Like you can watch cheetahs walk right next to Thompson's gazelles. If they're not stalking or hunting, the gazelle's like, I know you're not going to eat me. So most of the time in nature, it isn't a bloody battle, right? Like nature is not Thunderdome. We're not making them fight, okay? We're saying what would probably happen if they did fight. But like, I'm sorry, we're just not gonna write 8 bloody battles in a night. It gets redundant and horrific. So what we do is we try and use other kinds of scientifically embedded information, right? So sometimes there's a displacement. Sometimes a third party comes in and like, one of the most risky points of predation is when an animal is focused on something else and isn't being vigilant, right? So this is how nature works. It's not actually basketball. And sometimes you have poachers, sometimes you have roadkill incidences. Sometimes one of the most common causes of mortality of rhesus macaques, monkeys in India, is electrocution from urban wires. So we have all sorts of scenarios that play out that are evidenced, and we keep it variable because it would be boring if it was just the same stuff over and over again. So students should understand that we agree with them. Actually, we're more conservative than our players. I will never understand why 25% of people thought that 15 seed Dandelion was going to beat Nimravid, but okay, like, right. So we have, improbable outcomes that happen because of the random number generator, and we have to have a story for that. So just kind of preparing your students for why the stories are the way they are, even though you predicted like it'd be a fight to the death. And species have story arcs. And so sometimes, there's an animal that you're like, it wouldn't lose in this next round, but the random number generator wants us to. So we'll have it get injured or get full or get distracted or get busy mating. Safe for kids learning, and basically have these kind of different sorts of scenarios that are reflective of actual nature, because it's not Thunderdome.
So
Awesome, thank you.
Welcome. Jennifer.
Yes, I teach AB. So I have an AB block. So I see kids one day and then I don't see them for a couple, I see them every other day. And if it's a 4-day weekend, like kiss it goodbye, right?
Right.
So how would maybe teachers who've done this or you suggest, like, how do you catch kids up, or do I assign it as an extra, like something they do outside? How do people deal with that kind of a schedule?
So one thing I'll answer and then I'll hand it over to John is that we only have battles 3 nights a week. So if you see them twice in 1 week, you'll be able to kind of give them what's happened. But John, I'd really be interested in anything you have to augment that answer with.
Yeah, when I've
Oh wait, I was pointing at John Miller. I'm sorry, there's also John B.
No, that's okay.
Go for it, John.
John Miller.
So thank you. I could also go by JT, but that's fine. So Jennifer, I don't see my students all the time. I see them. I got 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. My 4th graders I see twice a week. My 5th graders twice a week, and my 6th graders 3 times a week. And so when I do see them, we just kind of catch up with what happened in the battle. I do keep my bulletin board updated because the kids are following what's going on, and I email out to the kids after each battle, kind of like updates on how the battle went, because they're 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, so they're not checking Twitter and other things. But then they like to get the summary in their email, and so some of them read it, some of them don't. Some of them wait for MC Marmot video, at the beginning of class. And so we just I just look at where those classes lie, and we just kind of fill it in as it goes. But they're talking. I mean, they're not going to wait for your class to find out what happened. They're going to want to know like where my bracket stands. And so I make sure like I print out like the scoring and everything, which I have a question about, but that's how I do it, is just how it just evolves. And it's okay that not everyone has class on the same day. It just is kind of it's a movement, and it just kind of just let it keep trucking through, and it'll all work out just fine.
And JT, you said basically just what I was going to say, almost to the word. And
good. I'm glad we're thinking alike.
The one thing I love here is it's almost like we as the teacher, once we set this ball rolling, they don't need us a whole lot, even in middle school, which is a great thing in this situation.
We get a lot of kids, especially because we span the US, and actually we have players all over the world, and it's really tricky, especially with all of our volunteers. It's always at 8 p.m. East Coast time, and a night's battles tend to have like a 2-hour run time, and so we get a lot of kids that are asking their parents to stay up to watch the battles, which just blows me away, right? Like, it's amazing. But then some East Coasters, like, the plan is that everybody, like, families look at it at breakfast the next morning, or kids come running into school, and as I think John and JT said, like, the kids that are really into it, like, they figure out how to access the different websites, because there's things get posted in multiple places. And so if they're allowed access to Facebook or Twitter or Blogspot or the LibGuide, they'll get all the updates, because we try and get everything posted within an hour of the end of the evening's events. Doesn't always work like that, but we try to. Always by the next morning early. I basically get on average 3.5 hours of sleep on tournament nights when everything's going full bore. And it's always so tough too, because when we get down to like the Sweet 16 or the elite trait, I finally feel like I'm like in the rhythm, and then it's like, oh, it's almost over.
So Katie, do you have everything prepared? Like, are you guys making the videos that night?
Yes,
Like,
yes. Oh, we
oh
don't
my
have,
gosh.
like the reason that educator materials aren't going out for like until the 22nd is because like I haven't finished prepping them for this year. And
Okay.
the one thing that we do is we know the champion before any of the brackets go out to anybody. And that's quite important, because we do not want any more than like the long-term buildup of complaints from different special interest groups, like the felid aficionados, right? Like they live inside my head a lot because they complain a great deal. We don't want chatter about any of the particular combatants to influence the outcome. Like, I'll just tell you, the folks, like, we wanted Harpy Eagle to win so badly last year. Like, we wanted Harpy Eagle. Like, when the small, because we have a subset of us that meet to do the probabilities, just because scheduling and all that, it takes a long time. But we were there, and we were like, final battle, kangaroo, Harpy Eagle, and we made our predictions. We maybe gave the Harpy Eagle a more chance than they really deserved, whatever. And we rolled the random number generator, and it said kangaroo. And one of the members, not me, somebody else, was like, let's do best 2 out of 3. And the rest of us are like, yes. And so we rolled the random number generator again, and it's like, did I stutter? I said kangaroo. And we're like, oh, fine. And so, that's, so the Harpy Eagle, oh God, I wanted that to be the champion so bad. But this is one of the ways where we try and, to some extent, fight our intrinsic biases and keep it, challenging, and force us to go into, really finding exciting ways to explain it. And to be fair, like full-size red kangaroos, like wedge-tailed eagles, do not mess with them. And wedge-tailed eagles are huge and intimidating, and they don't go after the big boomers. So the outcome was scientifically accurate.
So I guess maybe some advice to some newcomers, but also I have a question, because I've done this. This is my 4th year doing this.
Yeah.
Is have either your students keep track of their brackets, like, and number them, but our like spring break invades in that. And so my first year, like, I just did it as an extra thing. Kids picked up the bracket, and then so I was like self-scoring like 50 brackets each night, and that was too much. Like, you can't, you're going to go crazy trying to self-score. And so then we created this like Google form that works, but it's not wonderful, but it works. And I just didn't know if there's like, when I do my March Madness, brackets for basketball, like ESPN just goes ding, 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 and like is done. And then it auto scores. I was like, come on.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Keep in mind. And we have no budget.
I would love that kind of ease of scoring at least just happen. So like my kids got their brackets, they can self-score, but like for the teacher that's trying to print, I got 200 kids filling out brackets now.
So
what's the plan?
What we're doing, so the plan is, so last year, I don't know if you noticed, but we asked all the teachers that were creating their own materials that they used, right? So self-scoring, Google form approaches. One of the teachers did a movie style trailer. We had trading cards. I mean, all those. So in the next week, I've been really slammed, but in the next week, I'm going to reach out to some of those teachers who had particularly sophisticated, particularly excellent materials, and I will approach. So one I've already gotten confirmation from, but basically be like, hey, do you want advanced access? Do your thing that you do, and then it will release simultaneously when the educator materials will go out, and we'll embed the links to it in the educator material. So that's our approach that we're going to do this year. We're going to take what is most user friendly and has been the most adopted and recruit them onto the team. This is how we do everything, right? Like, who's doing a great job at something that they're spontaneously doing and then being like, join the team, we will make your job easier because we will give you the bracket ahead of time. So that's going to be the plan. I agree. I routinely hope for some kind of angel investor that will show up and like do some amazing web design for us or something like that. But we, all the online websites that let us construct those kinds of self-scoring things either come with ads that we can't control, which we are an open educational resource. We don't make any money off of what we do, and we don't want others to make money off of what we do. It is a gift to the universe. Expectation is that it continues to be a gift by all the contributors, and so we have this trade-off between we don't want to end up being on some shitty site with crappy ads and sending students to that, and we also want. It's also quite important to us that we protect kids' identities. And there's a trade-off in terms of the bigger those kind of crowdsourced forms become in the ways that we have access to doing it, the more personal information kids would have to give in order to be findable by their teachers. So we don't have a great solution for it this year. But one thing I will also say though is that, if you're working with high schoolers and middle schoolers, they can keep score of their own brackets. They're actually really, really good at it. And because they will like, this is what we did when I was a kid, is like, you keep track of like who has Clemson and who has Gonzaga. And when Gonzaga's out of March Madness, you're like, X. So you can do stuff like that. But what we're gonna use the most adopted thing. We're hoping to be able to use the most adopted thing from last year, but we recognize that it's one of the downsides.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've played around with different websites trying to make it work, and it's just like the ones that are slick, they recover their monies, so we haven't. Maybe we could reach out. Well, it won't be in time for this year, I don't think, but at some point I want to create a class at ASU around resource development for March Mammal Madness and hopefully recruit like a graphic designer or somebody else that is more sophisticated in website programming and see if we can't just in-house build it in a way that doesn't require us to get advertisers. Other kinds of questions? God, this is going so fast.
Anyway, I think we have time for a couple more questions. And so please jump in, folks. Let's have fun with this.
Oh man, people, I'm loving the comments in the chat. Yeah, your students will at times email me their disappointments, and I always almost every 99.9% of times, the conversations that I've had with them are amazing, right? So they'll come at it and be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, okay, here's how this works, and da, da, da. And then they're like, okay, I accept that. And then they'll go about their day. And it's really cool. I mean, they're clearly deeply invested in this. And we'll track down the like lead organizer to be like, I have some quibbles. It's great. Those of you that remember the Star Trek documentary, the quibbles of the costume that kid's mom made him.
So I have a question that I've had kids every year have asked, and I know others out in the universe here. So let's go. It's before the random number generator has generated a winner.
Yeah.
How do y'all decide, let's say there's a 70% chance that species A wins and a 30% chance species B. That is always the thing I have the hardest time explaining to my kids in a way that they'll buy.
Right. No. So what we It depends. It depends on the matchup. So one time Josh Drew and I were arguing over what would happen, and we literally got out like mass velocity force calculations of impact. And like one time, again, it's me and Josh Drew. Like pulled down our individual copies of the Wolverine Way. And we've never been in the same place. We've always been doing this over Zoom or Google Chat or whatever is available. And we'll like get out our book and be like, and then, oh, okay, so this is some deep tracks, 2014. Christy Luton, when we were figuring it out, the pangolin was gonna battle the Fusa. And Christy Luton has spent time in Madagascar. She's seen the Fusa. She's real, like she's an evolutionary morphologist. She loves Fusa. She thinks they're just really neat. And so she was just making all these arguments for why the Fusa was going to beat the pangolin. And like, it's got reversible ankles, so it can climb down trees just straight down like a Jeep, like, and she just like really, was like making this very, very, like it will be able to pry open even a, curled up pangolin, right? Like she's making this argument. We're like, okay, fine. The pangolin doesn't have a 75% chance of winning. It has a 63% chance of winning, whatever. Like you kind of, you just move that percentage. And we rolled a random number generator and the Fusa won. And so we're like, all right, you have to write that battle. She's like, that's fine. I'm happy to write that battle. And like, for whatever reason, Christy didn't realize that like the pangolin is a beloved animal. And so when that battle actually happened, and it was great, it was brilliant. The day before she wrote that battle, this international wildlife organization revealed that the pangolin is the most trafficked wild animal in the world. And like that got reported. It was all over the news. It was really, really topical, and the science had just come out. And so she cited that and had a poacher come and scoop it up, and excuse me. And people still rage about it. They still bring it up. They still talk about it. And so usually the way it gets decided is you look at the relative mass, carnivores punch above their weight. You have, when species are really closely matched, then the probabilities are very close, because most of the time they don't want to fight each other at all. They really don't want to risk getting hurt. Sorry, I've got dust. And so, it's, the probabilities are imperfect. We don't always have the same data for everyone. And so we can't really create a computer algorithm to account for it. And habitat ends up making a big difference. So when an animal has to fight, like there was a year that the octopus got dropped into the fresh water of the Amazon and dissolved because its saline pump failed. Sorry about, I don't have COVID. But so that's, so we basically we have a discussion. We bring everybody's knowledge and consensus. We have all the animals' weights. We have information about their habitat. And if available, we have information about their temperaments, right? So like certain animals just tend to have a very combative temperament, like rhinos are notorious for this. Black mamba snakes, where they will go out of their way to fight you. And then other animals are like, I'm just gonna hide in the shadows because I do not wanna fight you. And so that's kind of where we set the probabilities. Chris Anderson is notorious for wanting there to be upsets. If we have a division where it's like all the predicted outcomes, he's like chalk. So we have, we have a bit of a discussion, and everybody kind of feels good where we've set it, and then we run the random number generator.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
How do you justify, or really how do I justify to the kids who ask, what is this invertebrate doing in March Mammal Madness, or other birds or whatever?
It is part of the madness. It is not part of the mammals. So
Fair enough.
Yeah, no, so we've actually always in 2014 we started bringing in non-mammal combatants because the tree of life is amazing, and adaptations outside of mammals are sometimes some of the most incredible ones for helping us discover an absolute joy of the natural world. And so part of it is to keep it fresh. Part of it is to, really showcase all these different amazing species. And it's always going to be mammal heavy. There's always one side of the bracket that's all mammals and one side of the bracket where you get other species showing up. So that because of the way the bracket is laid out, it means that there will always be a mammal in the final battle. And we do that in part because we know cognitively that kids have much more, it's the term for it is content bias. They're much more interested in mammals on average than they are most other clades. And so we've worked really hard to have the tournament be a combination of familiar, charismatic favorites, kind of backyard things that they'll encounter in their communities, and then a lot of these kind of weirdos that they may never have heard of before. And if we only had weirdos, it wouldn't sustain the engagement. And if we only had the familiar, then there wouldn't be the same learning outcomes. So we're trying to kind of thread that needle. Yeah, great question. All of these are great questions.
So as a newbie, do we have kids start with the assumption these are all adult, healthy, like prime of their life? We're not talking like all of a sudden they're going to pick 4 of them and you're going to find out, oh no, your animal was like near death's door to begin with. Okay.
No. Now that prime condition animal may acquire an injury or an illness in the tournament in a way that it comes to manifest within accurate incubation periods downstream in the tournament. We do a lot of foreshadowing. And so, but the assumption is that the animal is a prime condition most competitive of its species. Now, almost always that's going to be the adult stage. Sometimes, like if we're talking about an insect, the larva is more dangerous than the adult, in which case that information will come out. This year, we're going to have a couple of very special divisions, and we're going to provide some of the key information. But there are going to be, so in the past, we've had social mammals and we've had species that were symbiotic and they would fight as teams. And this year we're going to have a division, keep this secret. Nobody put this on Twitter yet because it doesn't get announced till Saturday. We are going to have a division of where that species is represented by a team, in the sense that multiples will be showing up. Now, all right, I'll just tell you, okay, but don't put it on Twitter yet. It's a secret, but you won't understand if I don't actually just tell you. We're going to have a division of mammalian collectives. And this is going to be using some of these actually were developed in the late 1500s. So an example would be a busyness of ferrets, right? Or for a non-mammal, we could talk about a kaleidoscope of butterflies or a murder of crows, right? So these are collective nouns, because I'm a word nerd and I love having divisions that talk about interesting things in the English language. So now a lot of these collectives were created for animals that aren't actually social. So if they are forced to be together, are they going to cooperate? Are they going to turn on each other? Are they going to be repelled by each other that they, so students are going to have to think about, is this collective actually a social group? And what does that mean? And the slide deck will give you information on whether or not they're typically social, typically asocial or solitary, or that they are conditionally social. And then students will have to do a little bit of research about what does that conditional sociality mean? So is it only when they're having young, or is it only during mating season? And what do they do? Or is it, so like some species in the non-mating season, males get all together and hang out and have a great time and deflect predators. But then during the mating season, they all fight with each other. Right? So what's going on in March when that species has to battle in our not Thunderdome?
Okay, so another question. Are you going to have anybody sit out due to COVID protocols?
No, we,
Because I've been watching the Olympics and it's like, oh, the Norwegians would have won, but they had to leave the good guys at home. And I'm like,
no,
okay.
and if they do sit out, we're gonna give them quality food. But you know what was really funny is in 2020, as everything was shutting down, our tournament carried on, and we had already figured out the outcome. We already knew that the tortoise was going deep in the tournament, and it just was incredibly lucky that we got to make lots of jokes about sheltering in place. And that tortoise just kept advancing because it was safely sheltering in place. And like we, so many times that kind of magic happens in March Mammal Madness. We had the least weasel in 2015 already in the bracket, already planned. And then that picture dropped of a least weasel attacking a flying bird and riding it in that guy's garden in England. I had it's not a quokka, it's the not a wallaby, not a quokka, the little marsupial in between a quokka and a wallaby that got mistaken for a Tasmanian tiger, a thylacine last year. It was already in the bracket, right? So we had, like, it's really neat when animals are in the bracket that students are already seeing in the news or start paying attention to because it's in the bracket, and stuff like that happens. So yeah, no, we tend to not use something that doesn't apply to the animals in the natural world, and we don't use zoo animals. So zoo animals would be isolated if they got sick, but our animals are in the wild, and what happens is contextualized within nature. It's not that humans are absent, it's that it is outside of captivity or a zoo situation. JT.
So a quick thing that, and there's some newbies here, but my first time, I just reaped the benefits of other educators and the slide decks and just had my kids like just research them. But then in subsequent years, I had my kids do the research. Like I signed, it was a couple of days of class and like, pick your animal, and then they pick their animal, and it's like they own that. And some of them get animals that they're like, well, I don't even like this animal. It's like, well, for the greater good, you need to research, the animals so that we can all learn about their habitats and their diets and, where they live and all these great things. And now I've worked with the art teacher. And so like now when they're in art class, they have to like do an art project for their animal that they had to research. And so it just really gets them more embedded than just like filling out a bracket, because now they have a little more, and then some people are like, who did the research, on the red panda? This is terrible. Like, or, and so they start calling each other out for, just make a huge slide
Your
deck.
scouting report is garbage.
Right. They're like, how am I supposed to know this? But some kids are like, they try to make their species even more, worthy of battle than others. And you have to watch that a little bit, but at the same time, it's fun. And then, you share it out with the rest of the community, and people, can utilize it. But your silhouettes are huge. Like that was one of the best additions you guys did, because it just helped the young ones know the size of these animals.
Yeah, and I want to say one quick thing, and I'll go to Rachel. What we're seeing a lot of teachers do is they have students, they either like assign each student one or two animals, or assign a group of students several animals. They do research, and then they make a presentation where they report it to the class. So sometimes they do an oral presentation, sometimes they make a poster. And so a lot of teachers are using it to talk about, research, information integration, and arguing from evidence. And so some of our curricular materials are going to emphasize those learning goals. And then what we do is when we actually get to the tournament, in different rounds, we'll have, we'll feature physical adaptations, and then behavioral adaptations, and then human impacts, and things that come up quite commonly in the next generation science standards. Rachel, you had your hand up?
Yeah, sorry. Kind of jumping off what JT was saying, I also usually have my students do the research and put it together in a big slideshow, but you mentioned that there's going to be a slide deck that you guys are making. So what information is there? Will there be other work for our students to do in terms of research?
Oh, so what's really interesting is that when we had initially created it, was an elementary school teacher had asked for it, just because keeping track of 64 species can be really hard for younger learners. And when you look at their picture online, you aren't necessarily getting information about their relative size. And so what we've done in our slides is it's the name, a picture of it, a silhouette with a kid and an adult. So some of the adults have canes, some of the kids are in wheelchairs. I mean, like it's all different types of bodies, and so it gives them an idea of what the size of this animal is relative to a person. And then it will have information about what kind of habitat it lives in, whether it's a carnivore, herbivore, or omnivore. And I think there's one other line of information, but I can't remember what it is offhand. So it's pretty basic. And what I have found is that, like, in our mind, it was like, this is for, K through 5. And then a lot of people are like, this is awesome. I use it at home with my family. I actually gave it to my students. And so you can prompt them to get more information. And I will tell you, those of you that are teaching high school, we're developing a quite sophisticated high school lesson plan for ecosystems, interactions, dynamics, and impacts that I am so excited about this design and what we're creating for it, because it's going to get students to think about the ways in which individual species live in different kinds of ecosystems and different kinds of communities. And what a white-tailed deer has to navigate in the Yellowstone Basin may be very, very different than what it has to navigate in Arkansas. And what does that mean for their behavior? What does that mean for aspects of that animal? We're very excited about that. And so there'll be a lot of curriculum materials, and you will get links to editable, downloadable, and editable versions so that you can mix and match from the different kinds of pieces that we've put there for what's most relevant for your classroom and your learners.
I'm a high school teacher, so thank you. That's awesome. And it's my principal's favorite time of year. I promised him that I would tell you that. Like, he looks forward to it. I had to send him the email that said, like, that I signed up for the teacher resources, and I had to send it to him, like, it's coming. I promise you.
Along with lines, get people to sign up the brackets. Like, have your principal, like, the kids love to compete against other teachers and the administration, and they like to taunt them and say, like, hey, principal, blah, 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 like, you suck this year, or like, your bracket's trash. They love just this, like, conversations, about it. So get as many people at your school to fill out the bracket.
It really democratizes the classroom, and it creates a lot of interaction that's really, really meaningful and positive in lovely ways. And when students are beating teachers, students love it. I mean, they just get so excited, and it's really, really, it's really great to see. Teachers usually have the answers, right? And this is one of those spaces where we have the answers, and teachers have really good predictions, just like the students often do. And so everybody's kind of finding out at the same time, and that the camaraderie of that equalizing effect, I think, really helps build lasting relationships that might be there anyway or already be facilitated, but we're seeing. I get one of the most common things I get back on the survey is teachers talking about students that come back after they've left their classroom, after they've left their school, after they've matriculated to college, and they still come back to pick up a bracket. And, like, to me, that is one of the most loveliest things I've ever heard. Like, this is something that is meaningful to them. And when they come back and talk about the species with the students that are now in the classroom, you have this kind of continuity and scaffolding of community and knowledge and shared identity. And I imagine at some point there's going to be a whole bunch of professors in the life sciences, and they're going to talk about how they played this game when they were middle schoolers and high schoolers. And I mean, what greater success is there for what we've been trying to collaborate and build with all of you? So thank you for making it possible.
And Katie, I want to say thank you so much for being here with us tonight and sharing your amazing journey through this. And the fun is that we all get to be a part of it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to say and answer more questions. I think it's kind of winding down, but my dog is losing her business and she's hanging out in the guest room, which she usually likes to be in. And now that the door's closed, she's like, I don't want to be in here anymore. So I need to take her out for her evening walk. But thank you, everyone. Really looking forward to interacting with you and And I hope your learners fall in love with this as much as I think they will.
Well, we can't thank you enough. And on behalf of TABT, thank you so much. And I'm going to send out the flyer again. I sent it out earlier. I'll send it out again just so you don't have to go all the way through the chat. And anyone who's not a Texas Association of Biology Teachers member, you are welcome to join. We are not picky about what state you're from. And I'll also put in a plug. If anyone's willing to make a small donation, that helps us as well. But what a fun night. What a great way to spend Wednesday night. Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you so much for everyone who signed up.
Thank you all for everything you do. I know the last 2 years have been so challenging for teachers. So thank you all for hanging in there, and you're amazing. And I hope you're all doing kind stuff for yourself and not forgetting that right now. So everybody have a good night.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks, John. Thank you
so much.